I'm really excited today because I've got the privilege of interviewing fashionista Karen Millen, and I'm able to do it in this wonderful setting and surrounding, courtesy of Dermalogica, who've lent us part of their head office to go and do this special Skills Change Lives with Karen Millen. So come on with me, let's go meet Karen. Karen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, it's great. And look, of course, as you heard me say in that introduction, we're really interested in getting underneath the importance of the fact that the importance and impact of skills that change lives and skills that that mean that people go on to have, you know, whether it's a single career or in many cases these days, multiple careers, because that's the nature of the world we're living in. But I said a moment ago about how your career literally did start doing your sitting guilds at a college, and then you started the business from the kitchen table. So tell us a little bit more about your career plans back then.
Well, how far do you want to go back?
Right to beginning. Let's go right to beginning.
Well, I think, you know, going back to education and school, back in the 70s, I think careers looked very different to what it does now. I'm sure, I hope. So it was pretty basic ideas of what do you want to do when you leave school. You know, you can go into sales, you can go into banking, you can go into...
Exactly.
And I think I always had shown a flair for the creatives industries. So I loved fashion at the time. I loved interiors, but I hadn't really considered a career in either of those because it just wasn't put out there. But I thought, okay, what about painting and decorating? You know, I painted my parents' home, some of the rooms at home, and I loved doing it. And actually, one of my subjects at school was called World of Work, and on some occasions we'd go out to the town and we'd paint. I think one of the buildings was the Marriage Guidance Council, another was some other youth club or something. So we got to actually give them a makeover, and I was always the project manager with all of these things because I took it upon myself to kind of create and decide what colours everything was going to be. So, you know, I had this flair for interiors, but I don't even think I knew that interior design was a thing.
No.
So I just said, well, I'll be a painter and decorator. But my teachers at the time was like, you know, I don't think, you know, that's really what you want to be doing. What about fashion? And I'm like, I hadn't really considered it. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, they took me along
to... it was Medway. That's now actually the University of Creative Arts now, isn't
but
it?
It's actually gone now because I was in the one in Rochester, which is closed.
Yes.
But they took me along to the end of the year show and presented it to me and said, you know, what about this? And I'm like, you think I can do that?
Wow.
And they said, well, why not? We'll put your, portfolio together. And so we did, and did the application, and I got in, and never looked back, really.
Wow, but what's amazing about that, and you know, is lovely, is that you actually had teachers who believed in you. Absolutely. And showed you that, and took that, it almost became your career advisor in a way.
Well, they did, and I feel, really grateful that they were there and they could see, you know, where I should be heading, where I should direct my future. They knew it before I did.
Yes, yeah, but how great to have that, because I think one of the reasons, in fact, we're doing these short films, and very grateful to people like you who've had their sitting guilds as part of that starting out point, is that in this day and age, unfortunately, there is a lack of careers advice and guidance in helping young people make those choices. I'm not saying that the experience you had still doesn't happen, I'm sure it does, but there's lots of examples where particularly young people don't know where to turn, and especially for a career in something like fashion, which is so complex.
Well, I think I'm lucky in the sense that I kind of knew what I wanted to do, or at least I knew I wanted to do something in the creativity. But for so many, they don't know, and I like to just say, you know, it doesn't matter that you don't know. You know, try a few different things, and you know, you will find that. You know, you don't have to know at the age of 16 or 18 Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you say, people change their careers throughout their lives. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, more so than ever these days, actually, because of the fast pace of technological change. And we'll talk later, I'm sure, about how technology, the role it may or may not have played in your early part of your career versus to how you're finding that being quite influential today. So just staying in the early days, if we may, and you obviously already talked about going to college, and of course you then embarked on your City and Guilds in fashion. And how important was the course and taking that qualification to giving you that extra confidence, even though you clearly have natural aptitude for fashion?
Yeah, well, I think also I have to bear in mind that when I left school, I was 16. So there was 2 courses at Medway. One was the design course, which was a degree course, I think. And the other one was, I think it was called, what was it called? Something to do with fashion craft or something, which had an awful title, but it was equally a 3-year course. In City and Guilds diploma, and because I was only 16, I couldn't do the design course, but I had the intention of doing 1 year on the City and Guilds and then changing to do a 3-year course in design. But after the first year, I found that I was learning all the things I needed to all the skills I needed to do what I wanted to do within the course I was on. So I didn't need to change.
No. And you were quite happy. You want to just get on and apply it, I suppose.
It covered a lot more things like textiles, millinery, and even production, which I don't think the design course actually did. So I was learning pattern cutting, which I really enjoyed as well. And that that was crucial really for me going forward.
That's right, yeah.
Because starting my own business, I had to create everything myself.
Yeah. So just talking about that actually, so what was the inspiration for starting your own business? I mean, literally, I think you were in your kitchen, weren't you, or your mum and dad's house? I mean, white shirts, I seem to recall, was the start of...
It was actually some striping, some striped shirts.
Right,
yeah,
sorry,
I mean, not many people know that so much, but I think after leaving college, 3 years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to go and work for anyone. I found the industry quite daunting, if I'm honest. I hadn't moved far from home. And my mum kept sort of saying, what about doing clothes parties? So after doing the shirts that I initially did to sell to friends, I had to embark on doing something a bit more. So I managed to get a loan of £100. I bought some white cotton and made a small collection, and then we did clothes parties from my parents' home.
So it was literally clothes parties?
It was clothes parties.
Okay, yeah.
So very much like a Tupperware party, but with clothes.
Well, they were very in vogue back then, weren't they?
Well, they were, yeah.
Avon's calling into
Exactly, yeah.
Get your Karen Millen white shirt. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, so that's really how it started. Yeah. And then sort of probably 2 years of doing that, the one party a week grew to about 3 a week. And we used to do markets as well, anywhere where we could sell it, really.
Fantastic.
And then we managed to secure a small shop in my hometown of Maidstone.
And that was the first shop, right?
That was the very first shop.
And how many shops did you have at the point you sold?
I think it was around about 130,
that's right.
sort of across the world.
Well, and that was over a relatively short period of time, wasn't it? It grew quite quickly?
No, it didn't grow quickly. And lots of people think that because I think that it grew quickly after 10 years. The first 10 years, it was 4 shops. Yeah. And I think... Yeah, and for us, that was a crucial part of our learning and putting infrastructure in place so that when we got to the 10-year and the opportunity to expand, we had everything in place to do so.
But you obviously, as well as obviously the actual skill and, around fashion and design, everything you've just talked to there was about your entrepreneurial skills that clearly you probably didn't realise you even had at the time.
No, that was a thing.
No, exactly, but now it was obviously an important thing for how your career then evolved.
Yeah, and I think, when you start, so having left college, it was more about not building a successful brand as such. It was just about working and doing something that you absolutely love. So I didn't ever consider, we're going to be really successful and really make it. It was just, I'm enjoying doing this. I just know that I need to work and I have to enjoy what I'm doing. And it was just a very organic, slow growth.
Yes.
Because money was difficult to come by. And I think that worked in our favour too, because by the time we got to the 10-year period, when there was the recession, we had got ourselves into a position where we hadn't got lots of debt, but we had all the skills and infrastructure in place to take us to the next level, really.
And you mentioned something then which I think is interesting about, whatever we do, any of us, really loving it. And I think when you're doing something vocational and craft-based, and as you would put fashion into, I think you have to love it, don't you? You have to have that real passion for it. Otherwise it just comes out, or doesn't come out, as you might say, in your products.
And I think, one of the things when people ask, what advice would you give to anybody starting a business? And I think you've got to absolutely love what you're doing and believe in it, because it takes over your life. It is your life. And the only way to succeed is to absolutely have that passion for it.
And you mentioned a moment ago about, loving it, but then what was the moment when you maybe stopped loving it? Or did you ever have a moment where you stopped loving it?
Probably when we sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that, do you think?
Well, I think lots of things had changed over the period of 20 years. I was working with my partner, who was my life partner as well, and I had children with. Our relationship came to an end, which didn't help probably. But the industry itself was changing as the business grew from, the kitchen floor or whatever, the kitchen table, to this big business that had to be run very differently. So I think it was starting to lose its creativity. You were being dictated to a little bit by numbers and things like that, all the boring things. Yeah. And it's hard to, keep it real. Yeah. But I think also what I noticed was the fact that the whole industry was changing. There was a lot more competition coming through for fast fashion, cheap fashion, and competition really, but it was all lower end of the market. The likes of George, Asda, all of the supermarkets doing, clothing lines. And I just felt like, I walked through the high street and it all looked the same. And I just thought, I found it difficult to see where the future was with it. So I was kind of a little bit of a crossroads with it all, really. And I fell out of love with it. Yeah. I was under pressure, under, personal sort of changes, and I just was exhausted by it, actually.
Yeah. Well, I can see
I'd given it everything.
Yeah.
I felt like it was time to let
step
go.
back. Yeah. And as a result of having done that, I mean, so that was how long ago now?
Well, over 20 years.
Over 20 years, isn't it? So having stepped back and obviously done some other things, I'm sure, during that period, and now step back in, how different do you feel?
I feel energised again now. Yeah, because I've had that break from it. And it's always good to look back, through different eyes. I think when you're so involved with something like that, it's very hard. You're blinkered and you just keep going because it's a bit of a hamster wheel, and it's pretty exhausting. So it's just nice to step back and actually have a clear head and vision, and you can see where different directions you would take it. But the industry again has changed in the sense that we were very much about bricks and mortar, and things have changed in the sense that it's very much more online. And that was all coming into play just before we sold, and I couldn't quite get my head around online shopping. I was like, this is never going to take off, really. But of course I was wrong.
I think we all were, to be honest. Probably.
Yeah, so, going back into it now and seeing a different way of working, particularly because the brand itself is all online now. There's no stores.
No stores at all, no.
So when, they're designing, they're not looking at how it's going to, the visual side of things in a store. They're actually just looking at, a screen. So it becomes more like a catalogue kind of process, really.
And so is that what you're really doing now, Karen? Are you sort of getting back behind the name Karen Millen, which is your name, but working for, the organisation that has that brand, but you're actually now trying to influence them and being able to focus on what's important to you, which is style and fashion?
I think when they asked me to come back on board to do some collections, I wasn't sure whether that was the right thing for me at the time, but after considering it for a couple of years, I decided to go and have a chat. And they asked me to do a 30-piece collection last year, which they gave me a pretty free hand on it, and it was nice actually working in a very cohesive kind of manner, whereas I don't think they do so much. That, as I say, they're collections. They're not really collections.
No,
they're just
pieces. Get them out.
That just But for me, it was going back and doing this cohesive collection that has gone on to actually work the following year when they said come back and do another 4 for us. So it's very interchangeable, and it's very much the way that I used to work.
And I was admiring before what you're wearing now. I said, oh, that's lovely. You said, well, it's actually one of my pieces. So, yes. But I mean, are you seeing how you're able to pass on some of your skills to some of the teams that you are working with around?
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny actually going back into the industry, and it's a very young team. And I think most of the youngsters there didn't even know I existed.
Right.
So it was quite interesting for them to actually meet me and to hear some of the stories, me talk about some of the things that happened and how we used to work. And I actually took in some old pieces that date back to the 80s, and they were like, oh my God. And because fashion's sort of gone round in circles and it's very much 80s and 90s again, so it's all quite relevant really. And so that's been fun, and I'm sure I would like to think they've learned a little bit from me, and I'm learning from them too, so it's great, and it's just nice to be back in that environment actually.
Yeah, well, I always think reciprocal mentoring is brilliant. I mean, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how you had the benefit of those great teachers who acted as your inspiration, and in that respect you got lucky, but you probably don't even realise just how inspiring you are probably being to those young people that you're working with day by day.
Yeah, it's nice to feel that you're able to give something back. So, and people say to me about teaching and can you do this? You don't really realise what you do know because you just get on with it.
You accumulate it, don't you?
And it's only when people start picking at it that you think, oh yeah, okay, maybe I do know more than I think I know. But so it's quite interesting.
So you'd like to get into teaching fashion then?
No, I don't think I never, consider myself as a teacher. No. I don't know
more
how
a mentor.
to teach.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a different skill set, really, teaching.
No, it probably is. So, I mean, we talked a moment ago about the fact you did go to college and you did do your Sitting Gills. How important to you, I mean, was that foundation of having that Sitting Gills and that qualification in terms of, you talk about the skills it gave you, the confidence?
Well, definitely, because, I mean, I was lucky enough to do needlework at school, which is not a thing now either. But because I always loved it, and my mum used to sew for us, so I was used to having the sewing machine at home, watch my mum make clothes for my sister and myself. So I was picking up skills from her from an early age, and then going to school where they did I chose that as one of my subjects because, I loved it. Mm-hmm. So I learnt basic sewing skills there, but then going on to further education and doing the Sitting Guilds, I managed to learn a lot more of the techniques, the correct techniques for doing things, and also things like pattern cutting, which for me, as I said earlier, was instrumental really, because when I started, I had to cut the patterns until I could afford to take someone on to do them for me, because my skills weren't, pattern cutting is quite a difficult,
I can imagine.
Thing to do, and I sort of got by, but the grading for me was a little bit, when I got a little bit like, okay, didn't study it long enough, I did it as part of my...
Enough to get by, but...
Exactly, I'm pretty lucky that at the time, a lot of things were one size fits all, so...
Not anymore, right?
Not so much. Well, and then it was actually, when I started going into tailoring, because I've always loved tailoring, and so I thought, well, that's a bit tricky, I need to probably help with, making patterns for that, so I took on my first pattern cutter. She was probably the first person I took on.
Wow.
And she stayed with us. Actually, she was fresh out of college as well.
Right.
And I really tested her with a very tricky piece with lots of panels, and it was asymmetric, and she did it. So she stuck with us afterwards for some time. Yeah.
So as you think back now, what advice would you give to somebody starting out in what is, as you said before, changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years since you started, and actually because of that technology aspect to it as well, but someone starting out in fashion where it's really tough to cut through, probably tougher than it maybe was even when you started.
Yeah, I know. People always talk about everything's tough now. I mean, it's hard buying a house, it's hard getting into work. It was tough then, but I don't know. I think, as we said earlier, I think you've got to be passionate about what you're deciding to do. Absolutely love it, but there's so many ways of learning and there's so many avenues to all of the pieces that you need to put together. So learn, ask, and surround yourself by people that are going through the same thing or are there. So ask the questions, and I think it's also important to learn different skills that you can take on, you know, whether it's, you know, sort of like with the whole social media stuff, you know, that kind of thing, that helps, and you know, finances and things like that. There's lots of parts, particularly if you want to start your own business, that you can learn, and I think there's a lot more tools, you know, that are there available for you to learn now. So, you know, don't give up. Just keep you know, researching. And you know, research was difficult back in the 80s because we didn't have, you know,
internet.
No,
Google, the old googly.
Literally, you know, go through yellow pages and pick the phone up, or, you know,
knock on someone's door.
It was very, you know, and again, even when you were trying to get any kind of publicity, or it was knocking doors, wasn't it? Picking the phone up. It was hard. And again, social media, we didn't have that to grow.
And maybe you're right though, Karen. Maybe we've lost something by the very fact that, yes, social media does give you that instant access and probably means you can reach many more in an instant. There's maybe something more personalised that you can lose by not having to do some of the more old-fashioned ways, as you might call them, that you or I had to do when we were starting out in our careers.
I feel blessed that, you know, I had to go through those processes and do them myself, because I think by doing all of those initial things, you learn so much. And then when it comes to taking on people to do those for you that are more skilled in that area, you have an understanding of what to expect and how far to push it. But yeah, particularly I think one of the main skills was the pattern cutting for me, because I had the basic sewing skills, although they got better.
And as you look back now, and we've talked a little bit already about how you've re-entered, gone back into where you started in many respects, but as you said, lots has changed during that period. What would Karen Millen be telling her 18-year-old self if you could go back in time based on what you know today? Would you change anything?
Yes, I probably would. I think I would be a bit more involved and ask more questions. There's lots of things I didn't understand and was always too frightened to ask. Right the way throughout, and even after we sold the business, really, I think one of the important things is, you know, don't be afraid to ask.
Good. Yeah, just to always be curious and don't assume.
You tend to think that people expect you to know these things, or you should know these things, but how are you ever going to know them if you don't ask?
No, that's very true, actually. And I say just because, I mean, it was a huge success, but because you've built this great brand doesn't mean, as you say, that you necessarily know everything.
You don't know everything, and that's why it's about building a good team around you. And you know, one of the reasons for our success was because of the team we built. You know, we had a fantastic family around us.
And did you miss that once that?
I did. I really missed it. I'm still in touch with some of the people, but yeah, I got very fond memories of our time together. And so, you know, when I speak to everyone else, they too have. So, you know, it was special times.
Well, I think there's always something, isn't there? There's always a moment. I think we can all look back at our careers. I can look back at mine, and there are moments where you know you were working at that moment in time with a group of people where there was just the right energy, the right levels of trust, and everybody's driving at the same outcome.
Yeah, and I don't think I realised until now the impact that we had on retail and the high street. Definitely. It's something that I kind of, when you're working so closely within something, you just get on with it. And it's only now really stepping back after all these years and watching the way that the industry has changed, and knowing now that, yeah, that was a big part of the 80s, 90s and noughties, where we did impact fashion. And I think it was a recent headline, because sometimes you get so many headlines that are so bad and cringy, and it's like, but there's one headline was Karen Millen, the woman that dressed a generation. I thought, yeah.
You did, absolutely.
So, yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Well, I'm very proud of the couple of pieces I bought in my time, I can tell you.
Thank you. I mean, it's always nice to hear those stories as well from customers, and they had special memories of certain pieces.
Well, my special occasion dresses, to be honest, because they weren't at the time, for me, they cost a lot of pocket money, so to speak. So, yeah, I think that's a great headline. Knowing nothing about fashion design, I have to say, other than being very interested in clothes just to wear, I'm delighted that I've now got the benefit of watching a mini masterclass with said Karen Millen, and we also have been joined now by Kira Foster, who is also a City and Guilds qualified fashion textiles former student and now currently working. And Kira also happens to be a member of our Young Learner Advisory Panel that advises City and Guilds on the sorts of products and services that we need to have out in the marketplace. However, we've got this brilliant opportunity for Kira and Karen. So it could be a new partnership. This could be a new partnership to do a little piece and I'm going to set them the task. They've literally just found this out. So we've taken the concept of the City and Guilds logo and I'm asking them to come up with a tailored piece that somebody might wear that takes that concept of City and Guilds through into a piece of clothing. And really, Karen, for you and Kira to talk about how you would approach that, how you would approach thinking about the design concept, the textiles, the materials, and away you go.
All right, okay.
Okay, well, for me, I think it's going to have to be tailoring.
Yeah.
I think instantly I would actually say, put it as a lining.
Yeah, with traditional tailoring, a lot of the time the lining on the inside is a lot louder than what's on
That's
the
nice. Yeah. So you just do a flash, you mean? Like
And also, you know, when it's on a hanger, not that you see too many things on hangers these days because everything's online, but it's, you know, it's nice. You open it up and it's got something a bit different.
No, I like that. Classy. We're a classy brand, so...
Well, I think also it makes it very wearable. The other thing we could do is like a monogram kind of thing with the logo. So it's quite subtle. It's an option maybe, but...
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that came to mind is like using the shapes of like the lion and maybe having that as part of it as a top and then having some trousers and having an asymmetrical type embellished
See, she's better than me. I meant to take her on.
But I was thinking maybe like an Alexander McQueen style.
Oh, is that one of your inspirations as well, is it? Oh, okay. Where are you on Alexander McQueen?
Oh, I mean, he was just incredible, yeah, a master.
So what happens next then? So you've got a couple of concepts.
I'm going to let you do the drawings.
So I tend to, my process is that I'll probably pick a subject, which could be an artist, or like I tend to go towards maybe like theory or something that inspires me.
A philosophical theme or something,
Like a big thing in my degree was witchcraft because I was studying down in Cornwall, so it was using those themes and a lot about about like women and their environment, that type of thing. And I'll do loads of research, loads of images, and then I'll take those shapes from those images, turn it into designs.
See, she's a pure designer, isn't she? She is. I'm just very commercial.
You want to get your scissors out and
I'll just make it all happen. You come up with a concept.
But yeah, so that tends to be, but I also, I need to be more commercial, if that makes sense, because you can't build a business with clothes that people aren't going to wear.
No,
so
very true.
It's trying to make it and having that balance.
I think it is hard actually, because I think when I look at people that are successful, you know, like the Alexander McQueens and everything, you know, I don't consider myself as an artist. I'm a creative, I'm a stylist, whatever, but I'm very practical when it comes to, you know, and commercial. But it's about trying to create something that's not too commercial. It still has to have a point of difference.
Special.
Yeah.
People feel that they're wearing some, but that's what you always did that really well. You feel like you.
And I think also, you know, going back to pattern cutting again, it's about designing something that you can actually make. So understanding the process of creating a pattern is so important, because no point in designing something and then, you know, it's impossible to make that. So you have to have an understanding of, you know, how things are constructed together.
So when you say making a pattern, then would you literally, this is my ignorance, would you literally take a piece of paper, draw out a shape and then cut it? Or is it a bit more... No. Okay.
You work from blocks. So you have basic blocks and then you create your patterns from those.
Okay.
So, But it's, so it's a basic block of a body, you know.
Yes, a body, like sort of a curve of some kind.
Well, there's, you know, it's basic with darts sort of in it, and then you can manipulate things to
in this day and age, though, you were talking earlier, weren't we, about how the body's changed. I mean, seriously, I mean, is that not quite a challenge these days? Because there are so many shapes and sizes.
Well, it was always a challenge for us even. I mean, but more so now because they implement so many more sizes, they're much more inclusive now of a wider range. We used to do a size 8 to a 14, I think, so it was much more select.
Yes.
But even within those parameters, it was difficult trying to
get it right. Yeah.
Because you can have, 10 people that are a size 10, but they'll all be different shapes.
Will be different.
Exactly. Or, just different shape, the same size, but different shape. Different proportions. Like for me, I'm short, but I'm a size 8, but I have a short body. So, I have to be aware of anything that's too high waist it's
complex.
It's a very complex thing.
And is that why you do think, though, Karen, that we see now Kira's obviously drawing away there? Look at that.
In a happy place.
Yes, isn't she? Yeah, she's going to get the colouring pens out in a moment. Yeah, so what's going through your mind, Kira, now as you've been doing that?
I'm trying to remember the logo.
Right,
I remember there was two kind of circular shapes, and then when I first saw that red, I thought maybe black trousers, like flared trousers, and then like the different shapes kind of on the top and coming down the side.
And you mean using the shape, so it's like sort of the asymmetrical angles as opposed to
I quite like that, sort of you're half seeing something rather than the whole thing.
It's just there, like it's either just gone lion block, because that would be my lack of creativity, but
But and I mean, I'm finishing my tailoring soon. The project I was doing for that course was a bright red suit. Like a waistcoat, trousers and a jacket, so red is kind of still in my mind a little bit.
Red always sells.
Yeah, it does, yeah. Do you, what's your colour, sort of? What's your
black
colour? Is it? Black.
Of course. No, I am a very neutral but, I think as I'm getting older, I'm actually enjoying a little bit more colour, because I think it's kinder to you, probably. But it tends to be, I feel safe in black. But, in terms of when we were working on collections, it was quite colourful, really. And one of our, selling colours was red. And blue was always popular as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I remember having a lovely sort of dress from you, which was had lots of different shades of midnight blue, if you can allowed to say that. I suppose midnight blue's a colour, but it just had lots of different shades. It was beautiful. Well, yeah, who knows? But I do remember that very well, very fondly.
Yeah, I work with mainly neutrals, and I try to use blue as like my main colour palette.
Yeah, I think because blue suits so many colours, types. So yes.
And you can get so many shades of it as well. This kind of colour you're wearing today, like mine. I wouldn't say my brand colour, but what I used in a lot of my collections is like a cornflower blue or a periwinkle blue. Yeah. But you can always add a little more purple or a little bit more red, that kind of thing. So, it is fun to use colour, but I am someone who does prefer black, and I'm not a very patterned person.
No, I'm not
either.
Wear
a pattern.
No, so. I think they're tricky, and I think you either love them or you don't. And I find for me it's a difficult thing to wear, and it has to be the right pattern, the right print. And then you do find them occasionally, but it's true. It's hard to find a good.
But you must have gone, and maybe you still do, to the fashion shows during or did you? Maybe you didn't, or did you not really know? Because I always think, whenever I do see, I always think they're amazing, but you just think, is anyone ever going to wear anything that's just come down that gangway?
Well, it's more for the publicity, isn't it? It doesn't really make the shops at the end of the day, or parts of it's toned down, but it's there to impact and
to
create a story. And
well, they are now. They're like films, aren't they? Fashion shows are almost like mini film productions. Amazing.
Very expensive as well.
Yeah, they are. Well, if you go back to Alexander McQueen, that's right. I think he started it all off, really.
I think he did. Okay, right, I think I'm getting the idea now, so
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the shape. It might be a bit off, but
the idea
is there.
So the idea we've got, the idea we've got is, as you say, sort of like a suit, but using the asymmetrical, using the red, or indeed your idea, Karen, which I really like, is the idea of you.
It's the commercial. It's me with my commercial head on again, really.
The panel there, I like that. The kind of nice. I'm seeing silk, a silk panel, sort of. Very nice. Good.
And this pen is not the best one, but
again, it could work with you know, something along the lines of, you know, something being on the trouser part of it.
Yeah, on the
could be
pocket.
embroidered on, or you know,
Use of
appliqued
buttons.
on,
Yeah.
and then with the lining on the jacket, so that it could work through the whole kind of look.
Some pieces through.
Yeah.
And are you one of those people, Karen, that you kind of get you'll wake up in the middle of the night and you'll have an inspiration, and you have to have a little notepad by your bed, or you?
Yeah, you know, sometimes I think you should have, because you do, you know, sometimes your brain really starts to get too active, and it's not just with design, it's all sorts of things really. I've got to do this, got to do that,
Shopping
and it's
list,
hard. Yeah, it's just like, so really the notepad thing would be good. I don't do that enough, but I know people that do.
Yeah. And you were saying before, you know, working now, going back to work in that sense and working on your collections, but for a large organisation where you've obviously got probably, I'm making an assumption, so correct me if I'm wrong, but probably quite a lot of young people working alongside you, a bit like you and Kira now.
Well, that's what I was going to say, actually. This is where working in teams really helps in a creative environment, where you really bounce ideas off each other and you can come up with some amazing things then. So, yeah, I mean, that was really the starting point of our growth when we started having people come in working alongside me. It was fun, and
Brilliant. Well, listen, it's been lovely to share these few moments with you, having a sort of a mini masterclass talk, and I think we're probably both very impressed, aren't we, that Kira's just got hold of that pen, and the way she's gone, and I do like a palazzo pants, although you probably would say someone short like me shouldn't wear a palazzo pant, but I do like a palazzo pant.
Just wear some heels.
Yes, I always wear the heels underneath, exactly.
It was a very quick sketch.
Yeah, it's very good. Better than mine would be.
Well, thank you both. Thank you so much, and lovely to have this opportunity with you. Great. So that's it. Skills do change lives, and you've seen it in practice.